Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next The Promised Neverland manga review. This one's going to be for chapter 147, which is called Accumulated Hatred. And I felt that this was another really good chapter. I really liked the last one, focusing in on the demon perspective, and this one continues that with the focus on the Jiren clan and Jiren specifically here, focusing specifically on the flashback of how he was sort of removed from the noble families and why that happened. And I like this focus because I know a lot of people want to get straight back to like Emma, Ray Norman, what the reward that the one asked for is about and that sort of thing. But I think it is important to get the demon perspective because ultimately they're the ones kind of at risk in all of this. Norman's plan is to try and perform a genocide on them, eliminate all demons, and we know that the civilians of the demon people are not really to blame at all. It just happens that they eat food because that's the way they are, and that's how they gained their intelligence and sort of became a species. But there is a way to fix that. It is the higher ups, the nobles, that are the problem. But, you know, if Norman goes too far with his plan, there might be no kind of lasting peace, I suppose. So it's important to get this perspective, just to learn more about them, to have full context. So it's not just we completely are on the human side of things. It's good to get the demon side as well. And that's what we start here. We see Bayon holding the masks of his family, his wife, his children, and he also notes, Lord Jiren is beautiful and just. This is what he said in the past, and now he's just seen Jiren and his people slaughter his and the rest of the nobles' families. And so he charges at Jiren here, but getting ready to fight. A heart seething with rage, he cries out with a deep-seated hatred. So it seems like they're jumping straight into a fight, but we cut away. Cut to the flashback 700 years ago. And we see Jiren, still part of the noble families here, speaking to the, I suppose, council of nobles here, including the queen. And he says that in recent years, the lower grade farms haven't been able to keep up with production demands. In many places, all the people can do is go hungry. At this rate, many of our people will meet their end. Let's open up the national treasury of the nobility and give out a portion. And we see it says here, the 5 regent houses at the time, Lord Jiren. Everyone is shocked by this suggestion that they share their higher grade meat with the common folk, and this doesn't go down well with the other kind of 5 noble clans here. So Lord Noom from the previous generation says, you're saying to give up our portion to the lower class. That's dangerous. Don't you know the meat we eat and the meat those commoners eat are on different levels? Bayon's response, the previous Bayon, is, but depending on the degree, if we only give them a portion, and he trails off. And then Lord Pupo, who was the guy who was just killed last chapter, says, but wouldn't that mean our shares would all be cut? So that's the sort of response from most of the other kind of members of the nobility. We don't get Iverk's response, but he'll come in a little bit later on. But I like the different perspectives there. Lord Noom is all about the sort of class structure. He's noble, they're commoners. Why would we share our high-grade food with them? Because of that class division. Bayon is actually sort of kind of on side, like, okay, if we share a little bit, that might be okay, but he's still sort of, you know, holding back from going all in and supporting Jiren. And then Pupo is just pure greed, you know, that means we wouldn't have as much, you know, that we won't have enough, you know, just pure greed. So I like the different perspective from the different clans to just get across the sort of different traits that sort of altogether define the nobility in this case. They're trying to maintain the power, which in this world is the structure of how food is produced in all of this. This is where Jiren snaps back and says, how could you say such a thing in this situation? The people will transform into wild demons. People in the same village, parents and children, will be eating each other. How many villages have already been destroyed? And he just says, rulers are meant to govern for their people. If we don't protect our people, we won't prosper. If we don't take any measures, all of us will meet our demise. For our sake and our nation's sake, I can say with confidence that us nobles should give up a bit in order to save them. And this sort of causes everyone to be silent. There's no response immediately to this, impassioned pleading from Jiren. But this is when Duke Averk speaks up and he says, "Let's calm down, Lord Giran. I understand what you're saying, but everyone's concerns are justified. I believe that the problem is with the farms currently. The problem with the farms currently is how they're being maintained. They can't keep up with the growing population and the demand. But now that we've joined hands with humans, mass production of lower grade meat is being worked on. The state of plantations is still under review. Let us wait first, then we may act according to those results." And this is ultimately where the meeting comes to an end. This is settled. They're going to do what Iverk suggested and just wait and see, effectively. So you can sort of see he's the big politician, in a way, of the group in all of this. He's able to sort of get people on side by sort of cutting into the middle of both sides here, but ultimately it's just wait and see. He hasn't given Giran anything, and they don't have to give away any of their meat. So it's in the exact same situation as it was. They're just waiting, sort of having a discussion on it. Classic sort of stalling politics, I suppose, in all of this. Because in the middle of all this, people are still going hungry. People are still turning into wild demons, and this doesn't help anything. So we have a frustrated Jiren talking about this. They don't understand the crisis we're in. They're not even trying to understand it. All they can think about is profit while everyone else is suffering. And how many times have we already tried mass producing lower grade meat? Our inability to do that is the reason for this famine. And this is where we were introduced to General Doza, who is introduced here as the vassal to the Jiren clan. So just below the clan Jiren is the Doza clan, and we know that they're the ones who eventually take their spot. So there's a betrayal about to happen here, because we know Doza takes over. So he comes in and says, "You're looking as elegant as ever, Lord Jiren. To be the most noble out of the 5 regent lords, possessing so much knowledge and wealth, and to go so far as to share that with your citizens without hesitation. There's no ruler so loved by citizens and vassals alike. For your territory to be the one most affected by this famine," as he trails off, "and yet I can't do anything to save it," is what Jiren's response is. "But you must not give up," is what Doza says. "The seeds that you sow will eventually sprout, and you'll save everyone, and I'll be there to support you wherever you go." He thanks him and says that, "Doza, I have one request for you." And here's the twist. He goes too far with the information here, too trusting of Doza, and gets himself in trouble here. "So, I heard a certain rumor from a merchant in my territory. I want you to go check it out. If their power is real, we can do something for our people, and it might be useful for the future of the farms." And what he's talking about here is that he's heard the rumor about Mujika's blood and the power that it has to basically have people who have that blood not required to eat human meat in order to maintain their intelligence. So it will stop the idea of people turning into wild demons. It won't necessarily stop the famine, but it means that people wouldn't be required to eat humans, so they could eat other stuff. It doesn't solve every single problem, but at least it's an actual it's an actual piece of progress if they can figure out what's going on with Mujika's blood and actually use that with the people. So this is where we see Doza's face upon hearing that he's been sent out to sort of investigate this. He knows he's got one over on Jiren here, and immediately we cut to the next page and Jiren is tied up. Doza has told all of the other noble families what Jiren has done. He says that he's betrayed us, and that I'm glad you're such an idiot. And Jiren is trying to say, we're innocent, my clan and I are innocent. And this is when Iverk arrives and says, "I know that." And Jiren's like, "What? Then what are we doing here? You aren't plotting any treason. Your loyalty is as true as any. Everything was slander and drivel from Doza. But then why? You're in the way. Your righteousness and justice are in the way. I appreciate your loyalty, but you're a nuisance." And this is where he quotes the Queen here and says, "What's the problem? There are too many. If we let people die, then everyone can have enough human meat. That is Her Majesty's kindness." And Jiren just notes that she's rotten, and it's not just Her Majesty, everyone is rotten. And Iverk just says, "Your cleanliness is an eyesore. Doza's corrupt nature was just right for us to move on from that." And this is where we see, I suppose, basically the passage of time as Jiren and his clan are left, in chains. to over time starve and turn into wild beasts. And we see the sort of transition between Jiren himself becoming one of these wild beast demons, and then we cut back to the present and what's happening. Bayon and Noom here charging in with the attack, as we see some thoughts from Jiren. My clan, they're dead. The vassals that I lost too. Everyone was irreplaceable. How could we have spent 700 years like that? And we immediately cut to the aftermath of the fight, and Jiren is there. He's killed both Lord Noom as well as Lord Bayon. He has both of their heads in his hand, and he just basically eats both of them. So furthering the idea that he has more of this sort of noble blood within himself. He's gaining that sort of intelligence, that more normal look of a demon back. And he says, Bayon Brat and the little Noom girl. If you want to represent somebody, you should resent your own parents. So this is where we see Doza shocked. He's looking on. He's terrified of what's just happened. And his head is chopped off all of a sudden. So one of Jiren's other people chops the head off, stabs him in the eye and says, don't get a big head. The first thing you should have said was sorry, Doza. And he's been killed. And it's noted by Norman with Zazie and so on that only 2 more. All right, move in. And as we see everyone sort of watching this from like rooms all around where the nobles are. And this is when Norman is going to strike. Jiren has taken everyone out. This is where Norman can move in and apparently attempt to take out the remainder of everyone, including Jiren. But we'll see how exactly that goes, because again, Jiren was planning to betray Norman in the same way that Norman was planning to betray him. So how will that exactly happen? Plus, interestingly, the 2 that are left are Iverk and also the Queen. The Queen hasn't really been touched on all that much here, but the Queen is still out there. So you have Iverk and Jiren there from Norman's perspective, and then I think the Queen is going to be a big kind of surprise in all of this, because again, she's related to Luvis, so she's probably very, very powerful. But we know Norman has plans, like the whole stuff that Vincent was working on from before, so he definitely is prepared for this. He has a way to take out high-level demons very, very quickly, I think, in all of this. And again, his sort of general characters like Zazie and so on, they haven't really been covered all that much, so I think we're going to get to see them in action to see the full scope of like what their abilities are as Lambda experiments and so on. But yeah, other than that, that's been the chapter. Like I said, I really liked it. I know it's going to be a surprise. People perhaps might have wanted to see the fight between Jiren and Bayon and so on, but it's almost really fitting that they're giving Jiren the focus here, that Bayon is ultimately actually not that important, because in the grand scheme of things, Bayon's, I suppose, father chose basically not to act in all of this. He didn't stand up for Jiren. What happened to Jiren still happened, even as much as he was the one who was maybe most on Jiren's side. When Jiren was betrayed, he didn't stand up for him. And so neither did the new Bayon. And so it's just this situation where the nobles, in a way, kind of got what was coming to them. They performed a cruel action on Jiren. He has returned that favor by doing this. And, you know, he's inadvertently, I suppose, given Norman this chance to really take everyone out. But that might be exactly what Jiren wants at this point. So we have to wait and see on all of that. But I do really like it. I think Jiren becoming this huge player, he's no longer just the sort of the clan that Norman is planning to betray. He feels like he could be this sort of dark horse in all of this, of like he's going to do much more than I think we expect. He could be a real challenge for everyone, but who knows how much planning Norman has done. But yeah, I think that's pretty much everything I want to say. I suppose the question is, like, after this, like, what exactly are we getting into next? Like, is the Queen going to fight or what? I'm assuming it is going to be Norman trying to kill Jiren and his clan, plus Iverk, plus the Queen, and that's maybe when we might see the arrival of the One. But also we have to see everyone else arrive, like Emma, Gilda, Sanju, Mujika. Everyone has to arrive on the scene here. But yeah, that's been my review for chapter 147 of the manga. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts were, but that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.